Hi, my name is Elizabeth. I'm a librarian with the Cozby Library and Community Commons. And in this video, I'll be showing you how to make the two pop-up cards that were included in the Adult Summer Craft to Go bag or in the Adult Craft Casual bag. If you weren't able to pick up a bag, hopefully you'll be able to follow along and maybe come up with some of your own designs. This is one of those crafts where there's lots and lots of ideas out there on the internet. These are just two really simple pop-up card designs, but you'll see some on the internet that are really, really fancy and pretty amazing, to be honest. So here's the mock-ups of these two cards, so you can sort of see where we're heading with the craft that we're doing here. And I'll be showing these again when I actually talk about how to assemble our cards. So these are kind of examples of what the pop-up elements will look like, but a lot of this craft will actually be up to you. So I included the templates for the two pop-up cards, the butterfly and the cat, and you need to cut out those pieces. Be really careful when you're cutting out the cat that you don't cut off this little tab. If you do accidentally cut it off, just cut another little piece of orange paper and glue that tab back on, because you will need that to make the pop-up element. You'll need some glue, of course. These two blue pieces are going to form the card part. Hi, Ophelia. And then you'll need some scissors and maybe some markers. So the decorations are going to really be up to you. In your bag, I've included some pieces of scrapbook paper cut into different shapes. Also a big piece that you can cut into shapes of your own. So you can use this to be as creative as you want to be with your card. I would recommend before you actually glue your card all together that you glue on your design elements and draw any designs onto the materials before you glue everything together. Because once everything's glued together, it's kind of hard. There's not going to be a totally flat surface anymore that's going to be kind of lumpy, so it's going to be kind of hard to write a message on here or to glue anything really flat onto the card. It's not that you can't, but it's a little bit easier to do all that beforehand. Also, please be careful. These two packs of paper right here are for your braided bookmark. So don't use these on your pop-up cards if you want to make the braided bookmark later on. Alright, so I have decorated my first card, the one that's going to have the butterfly inside. And one trick I want to point out is that when you're gluing on your different decorative elements, one thing you might want to pay attention to is not gluing down all the way to the edges, to leave some parts of your decorative elements unglued, because that does add to that 3D effect that we're trying to go for with these cards. So that's one thing that you might try. It's totally up to you. This is your card after all. So you can see that what I did was I cut that large flower cutout in half, and I used part of it here, some of the flower cutouts here inside. I used some of that big piece of scrapbooking paper to make some decorative corners. Pay attention to the fact that, you know, in this one the pop-up's going to take up most of the room, so you don't really need to do a whole lot of decoration underneath unless you just really want that look. So one of the other tricks I wanted to point out is using a bone folder. So this is a tool called a bone folder. In historic times, this would have been actual bone, animal bone of some kind. Sometimes you can still find them today made of cattle bones. Most of the ones you find at craft stores today are actually plastic. But this is a really handy tool for paper crafting, especially if you're going to be doing a lot of work against the grain. And what do I mean by that? So machine-made paper, which most paper is today machine-made, is going to have a grain, meaning that there's a direction that it wants to fold in and a direction that it does not want to fold in. And you can pretty easily tell this on thicker paper. So on this quarter sheet of cardstock, I can tell that it doesn't resist so much when I try to bend it that way, and it pushes a lot against my hands when I try to fold it this way. So this would be folding against the grain. And if I want to fold against the grain, one of the things I might do is use a bone folder. So I'll kind of line up my paper how I want, and then I'll use my bone folder to make that fold. And this makes the fold nice and crisp, because sometimes when you're folding against the grain, the fold can end up looking really ugly and not straight. but this makes nice, straight, clean folds, even going against the grain. So again, this is called a bone folder. You can find it usually at any well-stocked crafting store. So let's get to actually making the pop-up element. So you can see here that I've actually drawn some legs onto my butterfly. The trick with this one is that we're going to interlock these two pieces. And it doesn't really matter which way you do it, just as long as you make sure that one cut is going to come from the bottom and one cut is going to come from the top. So let me show you my prototype again so we know where we're heading. So here's the prototype. The two pieces are just locked together and then glued down underneath. Now there's two ways that you can glue this down. You can glue it with the tab going out, or you can glue it with the tab going under. I'm going to try to glue it with the tab going under this time so that it's completely hidden under the butterfly. So I'm going to use my scissors, and I'm going to very carefully make a cut about halfway up. So I know it's really hard to see, but there's a cut about halfway up my butterfly now. Now this is probably not going to give the paper enough room to move, so what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to cut the tiniest little sliver so that I actually don't just have a cut, I have a notch. I know that's probably pretty hard to see. There we go, I got some sunlight coming through it. So I actually have a notch here instead of just a cut. And now this one came from the bottom, so I'm going to want this one to come from the top. Try to make this as straight as possible. So again, about halfway, I'm going to turn that into a very thin notch. Alright, and now I can slide those two pieces together. And if they don't slide down quite far enough, so see I haven't gone quite far enough, you'll just want to look and see, you know, which one do I want to cut a little further. I think I want to cut this one a little further. Again, make sure that you're making room. And there we go. Alright, except I want the legs to be on the bottom, so I'm going to put my legs on the bottom, and there my wings are on the top. Looks very nice. And I'm going to take them apart again. I'm going to make sure that my paper is going to fold where I want it to fold. So when this folds up inside my card, I'm going to put them together again and show you. When this folds up inside my card, it's going to fold this way. And so when I pull my card out, this is the action that I want to happen. So if I'm going to make that happen, I need to make sure that my tabs end up getting glued to the right place. So I'm trying to envision here, where are my tabs going to end up? And I don't want them to end up right in the crease, but I also don't want my butterfly to be sticking out of my card. I'm going to go ahead and fold where my tabs are going to be. I think that will help me visualize it a little bit better. So I'm going to take my butterfly apart. And remember, I want these tabs to fold under and be hidden. So I'm going to fold under. Again, I'm going to use my bone folder. You can just use your fingers. Especially fingernails tend to be a really good substitute for a bone folder. So there's one piece. And there's my second piece. Now let's see if I can envision any better. So it looks like I'll basically want to allow my wings to go almost to the edge of the card. So right about there is where I want my butterfly to end up. So this is going to give plenty of space for that opening mechanism to actually work. So I don't want it right here in the fold, because if I put the opening mechanism right there, there's not much distance that's going to be created by opening the card right there. So this way there's going to be more distance more distance created between the two tabs. Instead of the two tabs being right next to each other, like right here, I want there to be more distance between the two tabs so that the butterfly actually opens. And the way we make the pop-up happen is quite simply by putting the glue on the tabs. Now this can be really tricky. You want the glue just to go on the tabs. You don't want any part of the pop-up to be glued down. So just glue on the tabs. I'm going to place my butterfly right where I had planned for it to go before. So right about there. I'm going to use my finger to glue down that bottom tab, and then I'm going to make sure that the pop-up element is laying totally flat. Put the back of my card down. And now normally you would want to wait for a minute or two to make sure that your pop-up card is totally glued down. You don't want to undo the work that you just did, but if you want, you can kind of peek inside and see if what you want to happen is actually happening. And I can see that that one looks good, so I'm going to set this one to the side. And if you want, you might want to place a book on top or something heavy. I'm just going to set this one to the side. And now let's move on to the cat. So with your cat card, so I'll show you the front of my card. So here I wrote a little message. If you do want to write a message, do be careful if you use the permanent markers that are also included in your bag, because if you let the permanent marker sit too long, it will actually bleed through this paper. I know this paper seems like it's really thick cardstock, but it will actually bleed through eventually. And actually, I think I want to add one more little element to the front of my card here. That looks a little plain, so I'm going to go ahead and keep on decorating my card. If you will just give me a moment to do that, and you can see a little bit how I come up with my designs. So this space just looks a little blank to me, so I'm going to add that element, I think, and then I actually have a circle left over. Which side do I want? I think I want the brown side. So I'm kind of also repeating the design that I have inside. So I'm going to add this element. There, I think that looks a little bit more interesting. So basically, when you look at your design, you know, are there any blank spaces? I might actually add something else here a little bit later. But notice too, again, even with this dot, not gluing all the way to the edges gives me a little bit of a 3D effect. But on the inside, you want to be careful because the back of the cat is going to be right up against the back of this card. So the back of the cat is going to go like this, and so you don't want to put anything on the back of the card that's going to be covered up by the cat element unless that's part of your design. So just make sure that you're thinking through every part of your design. Now with the cat, this part is the body, and you want to make the tab. I didn't want to draw the tab on here because I didn't want there to be a line that might show where you didn't want it to show. But you want to fold over maybe about 1/2 centimeter on both sides. And then you can readjust this later on if it doesn't work. And then here you'll want to also fold this tab down. This is going to be the only thing holding down the front part of the cat. So this is really important that you have this tab. And then the head you'll want to glue on, of course, and it can be glued on at an angle for a little bit of personality for your cat. You can glue it on straight. So you could glue it on straight, you could glue it on, I'll glue it on at a bit of an angle. I think that looks cute. So you want to glue your head onto your cat. Okay. And now you'll glue on. Now you can do this in multiple different ways. So this is just one of many ways to make this happen. It'll be kind of up to you what order you want to do this in. I'm going to go ahead and glue the back of the cat on first, I think. And I'm going to leave the tail totally unglued. I want that to be one of my sort of 3D elements. So the back of the cat goes completely down onto the back of the card. And do make sure that this part of the back is glued down really well, because that's what your pop-up element is going to attach to. So at the very least, that part needs to be glued really firmly. Okay. Now I'm going to start gluing my body on. And the body needs to go right about there. And now I can glue the front of the cat. Now the cat kind of is going to just go in one place. You don't have quite as much choice as with the butterfly of where the cat's going to end up. There's really only one choice to still make the cat look like a cat. So try to put the body up sort of high. Make sure that it's going to end up being more or less level when you glue it down, so you can sort of estimate where the shoulders, I guess you would say, should go. And now from here, you can simply fold down and, oh, I've made a mistake. So here's what can happen, is that if your pop-up element ends up outside of the card, you know you need to readjust. So I'll need to move my body down further. There we go. And another thing that you can do, so if you don't want to move the body down any further, this is the other thing you can do. So just lightly glue it first, because as you can see, the cat may take some fiddling. So I can actually cut off a little bit of my tab here and refold my tab and make the body a little bit shorter. So I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to cut off just a little bit of that tab. And since everybody's materials are the same size, you may just want to go ahead and cut off that little bit, because probably pretty much everybody will have to do that. Alright, so I'm going to put my body back on. Still a little bit. Alright, so now I am going to combine that with moving. There we go. Moving it down a little bit. And you can continue just to cut the body a little bit shorter if you want. Again, this is your card. You do it how you want. I'm just going to go ahead and go for it here and see how it looks. So again, I've made sure that my cat is going to end up all the way inside my card, and then all I need to do is make sure this last element gets glued down. So I'm going to put a generous helping of glue there. And there is my cat. So again, really simple, but does need some forethought. So you saw when I didn't fully think my design through there, the cat ended up sticking outside of the card. So this is a great way to sort of practice your 3D thinking. And like I said, there are so many different designs on the internet for pop-up cards. And I hope you are inspired by this activity. Let's get my one that I actually decorated. So here's my butterfly from before. So again, if I wanted to write a message, it probably would have been easier to do that before. I just didn't have a message that I wanted to write inside this one, but there is my butterfly. Here's underneath. So those lines I drew are meant to look like the legs. And my cat. I wanted this, by the way, to look like a rug, so I kind of made this look like the inside the abstract inside of a house. So you can use these same mechanisms to make different animals, different shapes, flowers, clouds. I've seen all sorts of different amazing pop-up card designs out there. So I can't wait to see what kind of creative ideas you all come up with, and I'll see you in the next video.